let's get stuck into our favourite squad of all time, the Lionesses.
Okay, I mean, my team are playing tomorrow, but yeah, go on.
Who? Sarina Wiegman named her squad last week for the friendlies against USA and Switzerland. What do we make of the squad? Do you feel there was any kind of like big changes there? I mean, not massive. It wasn't kind of massively controversial.
Not at all.
Different names are on the list. City's Laura Blinkilder-Brown and Leicester's Ruby Mace got their first senior Lionesses call-ups. Gabby George returned to the squad for the first time since November 2022. We've also got a bit of an update. Marla Tissier will be missing the game against the USA due to a concussion that was diagnosed after the game against Chelsea last weekend. So Lotta Wubben-Moy has been called up to the squad.
Interesting one, that, because wasn't Lotta coming back from an injury, which was concussion?
Yes.
Weird synergy there.
And we've only just got Leah back from concussion. It all just feels very...
Careful, guys.
Yeah.
Jesus. To be honest, for me, it's pretty much as expected. Like, I don't think there was anything controversial. Some new names as well, which is great, despite the narrative being that she never brings in new players.
Yeah.
Got a couple more names in there, which is exciting.
100%. I mean, Anna Morehouse as well, sort of joining the goalkeeper
Congratulations.
list, which is amazing.
On
really
winning.
interesting not seeing Kiara Keaton there and then seeing her pop up on the under-23s list.
Well, that's kind of the point of that pathway. So she's still involved in international duty, which is great. She's, I actually don't think that's surprising.
Really?
Well, yeah, she's not really playing. So rather than missing out and being in the senior, like, it's not like you get into the senior squad and that's it. If there's still the opportunity to be in the under 23s if in a particular window you're not called up. And I think it's great because it means,
But
you
why
don't
would
just
you
get
not just
dropped
keep
out.
her in the seniors? I mean, she wasn't. I don't think there was an expectation that Kiara was going to sort of make an imminent appearance anytime soon.
And
But
have four keepers?
No, but I think being in and around that setup, surely, I think would be helpful for her to kind of gel with the keepers and kind of seeing the longevity when she's already been called up to the senior squad.
So who would you drop out?
Well, probably Anna Morehouse instead of
Just one, the end of Russell.
No, but I'm not. This is just my view.
Oh.
I think once you've been called up to the senior squad,
That's it.
and you do. Well, I do think it feels like a bit of a step back for Kiara in a way.
She's so young; she'd be fine.
100%.
She is
But so
the
is
future
Hannah
of
Hampton.
England goalkeeping. Don't
But
worry.
then why would you not put her and keep her in the senior squad?
Because there's other keepers who deserve the place.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether she starts for the under 23s. I mean, that will be a bit of that does feel like a bit of a fall from grace to go into the under 23s, then not start for the team. But
we have a difference of opinion on that.
all right, we'll agree to disagree.
We'll agree
then.
to disagree. I know you love Kiara Keating. She will be back.
I do. What do you think the main dilemmas Sarina is going to be having to get fixed in these two friendlies coming up?
Well,
I mean,
back up for Lauren Hemp.
yeah.
Especially in LJ's absence. I think obviously the Germany game was a very stressful game to watch. But one area that felt like a positive was that front line, that link up play. So to not have Lauren Hemp, who's been one of England's best players for the last couple of years, is a real loss.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see who potentially will get the call up. I feel like we'll probably have a Kelly, Russo, Mead front line, but you've got the options of Jess Naz, you've got the options of Aggie Beaver-Jones.
Mm-hmm.
There is options. There's some versatile players in the England squad. I'm pretty sure Grace Clinton played in that position at some points for Tottenham. So at least there are options. But I think that's probably the big one, first of all. Defensively, we all know that's an area England are keen to improve. So that will be, I think they'd quite like to have two comfortable games, but I don't know if they will be comfortable. I think backup for Kira Walsh is still an area that needs addressing. And I think we may not see it addressed in this window, but the fact that Ruby Mason, Laura Blinkilder-Brown have come into that setup is quite exciting.
Do we anticipate that some of these younger players are going to get a chance, or do you think Sarina's going to come out all guns blazing? This is definitely a very fierce friendly if I've ever seen one, but do you think there's going to be that opportunity for Sarina to...
Well, I think there will have to be some changes from the last game against Germany because of injury, but I think it's be a similar window to the last one where you've got a very challenging opposition followed by potentially a less challenging opposition that poses different situations. So I think we're going to see a similar situation where we're going to have what Sarina considers her best starting 11 at the time against the USA, and then I think we will see some changes in the Switzerland game.
So you think it's going to be an absolute almighty head-to-head, absolutely all guns blazing, straight in type?
Well, that's why you test yourself against the best, is to have these difficult matches and put yourself in these difficult situations. And that is what I expect from. I think people are constantly calling for changes all the time, but I just think going into this window, I do think it's going to be similar to the last one.
Okay, interesting. Well, do we think there's any kind of players that we think deserve more game time, even if we might not see that initial rotation? Sarina made 8 changes to her starting lineup against South Africa after their 4-3 loss to Germany, which is still, to this day, probably one of the most bizarre games of football I've ever seen in my entire life. Jess Naz got her first start, and Grace Clinton, Myla Tissier and Jess Park also came in.
I think, we might see Jess Park in the midfield, Ella Toone being out, be a good opportunity for her to start. Again, that left wing position is an interesting one. I do think it'll probably be a Chloe Kelly purely because of her experience in the England squad, despite not having a huge amount of game time. But that could be an area where she chooses to change. I
want to see more of her in the England squad. Yeah, I know she's kind of dropped off. England and also Man City. I do feel like I want to see her get back to kind of like where she was. I'd definitely like to see more of her. And Jess Naz, I think 100%. I think she's going to come on as substitution. I think probably like a 60-70 minute substitution. Yeah, for her. So yeah, I think there's a lot of players there who will get that game time there.
And you've got Aggie Beaver-Jones who can play centrally and in winger position as well. So there's opportunity for her potentially to get some minutes as well.
100%. And I think a lot of these players are obviously going to be looking at Euro 2025, proving themselves. It now feels like it's like creeping up. We're almost in January. Well, we're almost in December, but we are definitely almost in.
God, don't wish away Christmas
yet. The year in which like the Euros happen. It just feels like wild that we're 6 weeks away from like the year of the Euros again. Do we think there's any kind of players who need to prove themselves? I think for me, from my end, I feel like it sits in the goalkeeping camp.
Of course you bloody do.
Yeah, well, someone needs to flip and talk about goalkeepers again.
Well, gosh, because you're so normally like so reserved and quiet about that position.
How
do you feel?
Well, we've not spoken about Kiara Keaton in at least 5 minutes now. But I think, for me, I think it's going to be interesting to see who starts. We've kind of seen Hannah Hampton start a few games. We saw Mary Earps in the last game. And I don't feel like Sarina's settled yet on who she's kind of going to give that number 1 jersey to. I feel like it is still very much up in the air. Mary obviously had a bit of a tough start to her life over in France with PSG. Now seems to find some consistent form, which is great. But also Hannah Hampton is doing doing bits. So I can't call this one, but I think it kind of feels like this game. Not as a decider, but I do think it's indicative. Lightly indicative.
Okay. I can't see many of the quote unquote starting 11 being dropped for Euros 2025 unless things go disastrously wrong, and hopefully they don't, and touch wood, nobody gets injured.
Do you think Hannah Hampton could take the number 1 jersey?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, there's also, you have to factor in there's some key injuries in the squad at the moment, and it will be interesting then to see who will get dropped out of the squad when they come back. So you're looking at like a Niamh Charles, Lauren James, very important players for this England squad.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come back, who's going to drop out will be interesting to see. And when we look at some of these younger players getting time, getting called up to camp and stuff like that, like which one of those will be the ones to break through and get to a major tournament, I think is super exciting as well.
Interesting. So we've got a question in from City Football Dad. Great name. Has asked on Blue Sky. What the hell is that?
We're on that now.
What the hell is Blue Sky?
It's the new Twitter X/X.
Izzy was talking, my social media exec was talking to me about this before, and I literally said I don't have time for another platform.
Yeah, well, we're on it. We're getting questions.
Are you joking?
Let's answer it.
Christ. Given it's a friendly, should Sarina pick on current form, on historical performances, or with an eye to the future? Go on.
Okay, so as I said, I do think, they're going to face up against the USA and put out their best 11. I think it's not as simple as picking the 11 players in those positions that are in the best form for their club. That's not the only factor that goes into picking a starting 11.
What?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it feels like that's what everyone expects. There's things like players who play together, the relationships that maybe are already developed, and how they gel together in training and in a squad. What do the tactics and the formations call for? Who's best matched for the opposition you're going to be facing?
Sure.
There's a lot of other things, the right blend of youth and experience, and they're all other factors that come into who gets picked. How are they getting on in training? They could be brilliant at club and they could come to country and just have a really struggle in training. You don't know what's happening. So I don't think it's as simple as just picking the best 11 who are playing the best for their club at the moment. as I said, I don't think this is the game where she's going to be trying new things.
Okay.
I think they want it. We don't, you don't get many opportunities in international football when you think about it to challenge yourself maybe against really top teams. Now I appreciate there are obviously very good European teams at the moment, so in that respect that you do, but the opportunity to play the USA doesn't come around that often. I've been looking back at some of the fixtures. So yeah, you want to challenge yourself. You want to put your players in those difficult positions and challenge them in those situations and see how they perform. And I just don't feel like this is a game where you're going to be making too many changes.
Do you think there's an element of pressure on Sarina and the squad that hasn't existed before so much in terms of the heightened criticism that we've seen around the past performances, how shaky they've been defensively, how they've kind of let the game slip from out underneath them. Do we think there's a lot of pressure going into this game that naturally probably wouldn't exist in a friendly?
Yeah, they've set the bar high. People expect them to win all the time and play well all the time. And anytime there's an issue, I do think it can be catastrophized and maybe blown out of proportion at times. You've got to remember in the last two major tournaments, England won and got to a final. So I think a lot of teams will be happy with that kind of consistency in a major tournament. These in-between windows are the opportunities to try and test things. And if you're going to lose, you want to lose in friendlies and learn from those mistakes, right? So tournament football is very different. So yeah, there definitely is problems and there's narratives drawn that maybe aren't really there but are interesting to talk about. And if they lose this game, I really don't think it's that big a deal to lose to the Olympic champions. Granted, both sides are missing key players, but I do think there will be an awful lot of hand-wringing and catastrophizing if they do. But also, the first 30 minutes of that Germany game were some of the worst football I've seen.
Interesting, though.
England play, yeah. But to then go and score 3 goals was wild because that's something England had been struggling with. Everyone demanded changes. Changes were made. England didn't perform that well. Everyone lost their minds. It's what do you want? So like I said, these are the games. These are the moments where you're trying things. These are the moments where things don't go well and you work out why those things don't go well. You'd rather your players come up can be out of form, and you'd rather be happening now and then you peak at the Euros. That's the goal.
All right. Rachel said it here first. Very, very, very strong views on this, listeners.
I just relax,
very strong
guys.
views.
It's fine, but you are correct. There is way more pressure on every game.
Emma Hayes has had her first press conference back in the UK earlier this week, and it was at a pub in Camden.
Of course
Where
it was.
else? She was pulling pints afterwards, much to the delight of everyone who went down there and put it all across socials. Apparently she was quite a good pint puller. What are our impressions of Emma Hayes' reign of the US women's national team so far, given that she's been in the job all of about 4 minutes and 30 seconds and has already achieved Olympic gold?
There's Taylor Swift songs longer than Emma Hayes' reign. It's been nothing short of successful. Winning a gold medal with the team after 76 days? What else can you call that?
76 days.
It was something like that. It was less than 80 days.
That's a joke.
They're unbeaten under her, and during the Olympics arguably didn't always play the most convincing football, but got the wins. And, that's something we're used to seeing from an Emma Hayes team. So to have that level of, I think they call it winningness.
Winningness?
In America. That's winning
so
attitude.
American.
Yeah. To have that in the squad already is really impressive. And, I do think it's that expectation environment, winning culture, the sports culture, everything around the US soccer team is an environment that Emma Hayes would just love going into because that's the kind of mindset she wants to set as well. So, yeah, I think, she'll be using this window to see as much talent as she possibly can. I think she's got plenty of time before the next major tournament, before the World Cup. You can see that she's using it to see youngsters. I think it was 7 uncapped players she gave a chance to in the last window. She's brought another 2 more up into this one, Fallon Tullis-Joyce and Centner as well, which is exciting. So she's got time to give these players chances, to bleed them into the squad, so that by the time the World Cup rolls around, she's got such a big roster of players to choose from. So yeah, I think so far so good. It's such an interesting, she's gone from having no time before her first major tournament to having the luxury of quite a bit of time before the World Cup.
But that's what's scary though. Emma Hayes with absolutely no time to fart produces what she can. Emma Hayes with all
Such
the
a bad time
on
to
her
take a drink.
hands. It feels like a really scary proposition. Like you have time to build something. That feels even scarier than not having a moment's worth of pausing.
It just makes me think of, in like those old movies, war movies, where like the first lot of people would get knocked down and just another lot would keep coming. And it just feels like come 2027, it's just going to be like 700 players.
She'd have just built a team of like cyborgian type players and just destroy everything in their path.
It's an area that she's looking to develop, is that wider ecosystem in the women's game, which is, she said that it was a quote she said, I think it was in The Guardian, where something she says to Harry, how do you eat an elephant? One chunk at a time. And that's kind of what she's talking about, that whole big job of how she wants to, improve the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one chunk at a time.
She's come up with some really amazing quotes, actually. I was reading that article and she was asked about the pub that she was in. He said, thankfully, it still smells of fart and feet. So, Emma.
And stale beer.
Delivering more
delicious
absolute gold.
Another pint of that, please.
But she did say, I've got my mojo back. And I think it is very, very clear that she has. And sort of talking to some of the wider context points there about what she's trying to build, not only with the squad, but also in US football. Obviously, loads of projects, looking at kind of developing the national team for 2027 specifically, but also the youth team strategy, under 23 team. And also there's been this massive donation from Washington Spirits owner Michelle Kang of 30 million into the NWSL. So it looks like she's going to be helping the federation sort of build frameworks, the commercial side of things, marketing, comms, performance, technical analysis, all seen through a female lens. So it's kind of really scary in a way to kind of see what's being built over that side, and also to kind of see it in action in the very initial stages at Wembley, of all places, when the Lionesses have probably the most amount of scrutiny that's ever been placed on them. So it's it feels like a pretty big game.
Quite the matchup.
Quite the matchup. Hayes has named a much changed squad. 15 of the 22 players who carried the USA to gold at the Paris Olympics this summer remain, but there'll be no triple espresso due to some nagging injuries. I mean, that's not to the delight of fans at all. On socials, pretty much constantly throughout the Olympics, and like you said, Man United's Fallon Tullis-Joy has been called up, which is a really, really good move and very well deserved. She's put in an absolute shift at United to go from pretty much barely having any game time to being one of their greatest assets this season. The last time these two sides played each other was in 2022, and England came out on top for the first time since 2017. I was just a wee bairn then, but a small mite. How different is the team now compared to when they beat the USA 2-1? I mean, Rach, being the older one of us two, you've obviously seen quite a lot of the older games.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, talk to us about that transition that you've seen from the good old days.
I mean, I've seen England USA since I think 2015 was when they first played. After we set up Girls in the Ball in 2012, so they beat England 1-0 at Milton Keynes. 2016 1-0 to the USA in She Believes Cup. 2017, this is probably my most memorable game for all the wrong reasons. It was in New Jersey. England won 1-0. It was like one of the first times they'd beaten the US on US soil. And it was the coldest game of my life. It was like -9 with a -13 wind chill. And now we weren't in the press box at the time, but I know that a lot of the journalists said that their laptops froze during the game.
Oh my God.
And it was back-to-back games, right? So you had the first two, I think it was maybe Germany, Japan, maybe. That was 0-0. And then we had to sit through that, and then we had to sit through the England-USA game. It was Ellen White, I think, who scored in the 84th minute. So we had to wait that long for a bloody goal. But England won, and it almost kind of was not that big a deal. It was a friendly, but it was almost a turning point because the USA are such a behemoth of a team that, you'd be so afraid to play against, and to get that win was big for England. Now, listen, it went back to a 1-0 victory in 2018 to the USA. England then drew with them in 2019 2-2, so that they actually won the She Believes Cup for the first time. Huge, magnificent trophy to win. Massive honour. She Believes Cup. R.I.P. It is still going though. And then, of course, we had that terrible 2019 World Cup semi. There's some big games in there. But when you look back at the most recent one, when England won at Wembley, personnel-wise, not a huge amount of difference, but a very different vibe and situation coming into that game. England had just come off the back of winning the Euros. They were on this high. It was the European champions against the world champions. You know, it was unbelievable marketing from the FA where they dropped it like the day after England won the Euros. So it was a really exciting game. I do think this is different. There's changes from, you know, there's new players coming into the England squad. There's key injuries in the England squad. You've got key injuries in the US squad as well. And a lot of new faces and new managers. So it is quite a difficult one to call. And it's quite a difficult one to kind of work out where it's going to be won and lost.
I'm really excited to see the USA fan presence and see sort of how many fans are coming over for the game and to grace Wembley Box Park with their presence. I feel like it could be quite a nice, and to see how that space is being activated. Just sort of moving away from the player side of things just briefly there. We've got quite a few listener questions in. Jess has asked us on Instagram, what will be the USA's biggest threat? USA's Naomi Girma is arguably sort of one of the best defenders in the world right now. But who are we talking about in terms of upfront talent?
Well, they are obviously missing Triple Espresso, which is a real shame. I think
Killer.
I know Girma's a defender, but I think she's probably going to be quite a big threat to the England front line
all day
because she is unreal. I think what's super interesting is there's quite a bit of youth in that squad. I think Emma Hayes will tell them to go out there, express themselves, enjoy themselves, play with bravery and confidence. And I do think there will be maybe a number of players with quite few caps that, you know, they're almost like an unknown. And I think, you know, at least with Triple Espresso, you kind of know what you're going to get. And I think actually having them out will be quite an interesting thing for England to adapt to, because the threats may be coming from elsewhere. And like, we've still got a lot of experienced heads
for sure
in the game as well. And I think the speed at which the US transition as well, you know, with that England shaky defence could be quite a threat.
I think it's that. I feel like it's going to be almost like a replica of the Germany game, where it becomes sort of quite end to end in a way. Kind of both teams.
Jesus, not that first 30 minutes.
I mean, it was as a game. It was fucking fun. Thinking about Girma, just sort of moving back again there. We've got a listener question in from Neil who asked on Instagram: do you think Girma will move to a European club in future?
I hope so. Just selfishly.
I mean, Christ, Naomi Girma in the WSL would. I mean, I would. Fucking
she could fit in anywhere. Any club would be so lucky to have her.
Who do you think needs it most?
Needs her?
Yeah, needs it most. If budget wasn't an issue. Don't go saying Palace.
I was going to say Arsenal.
Yeah, to be fair, and they do have the budget for it. Watch this space. She's currently tied down to San Diego Wave until 2026, so probably not going to see a move anytime in the very near future, but possibly in the longer term.
Stranger things have happened.
Oh, weird. Layla has asked us on X/Twitter, what do you think is Hayes' real motivation for this game? Is it to beat England or to test and check out members of her squad?
Both.
Yeah, I think she's here for destruction. She didn't come here to piss about. Go and take some river rides on the Thames, do the London Eye, go and see the Tower.
See the fam.
Yeah, go and see like the Crown Jewels. Go back and like, I don't know, have a look at how amazing the Chelsea trophy case is and will be, given Sonia's reign at the moment. She's not come here for fun. This ain't a fun and games. She might be pulling pints.
I feel like
she wasn't drinking them.
She left England, and it feels like you've broken up with an ex, and she's coming back with her younger, fitter team, just being like, "Hey, remember me? I'm doing really well.
Still sexy.
Is that a gold medal around my neck? Yes, it is. How have you been doing?"
That's exactly the kind of woso drama that we need right now. Yeah, I think to answer your question, we think that she's here for business, basically. She wants to destroy England. Yeah, I mean, take us out, like, one by one. Just, like, destroy morale. Just, like, really put the feelers in.
It feels really over the top.
No, I don't think it is. I think this is her mentality. You said it before. You said she's a mentality monster. I think she lives, eats and dies and breathes it. And now she's got more bloody time to do it, which is the worst thing. Yeah, I think there will be an element of, obviously, maybe getting more game time for members of her squad, given that she does still have those
and
kind of
challenging
industries.
them.
Yeah, 100%, and putting them in those.
To play the Netherlands afterwards as well. So
yeah, so yeah, I do think I think that is a smaller part of her motivations for sure.
I think that's quite a big part of it as well.
I think destruction is the biggest. Hayes has, of course, said that the latter is her priority, but surely there's a bit of extra skin in the game for this. Particular.
It's exciting. It's two of the best managers in the game coming up against each other. It is a shame
For
that
the first time in history.
it is a shame that there's injuries. It would have been great to see them come up with they're fully stacked squads, but
No, but you
it's
don't
still going
want
to be super exciting.
that to happen until the Brazil final, Rachel.
Oh, sure.
Okay, like bide your time. Okay, don't you can't have all your eggs in one basket at the same time.
Sorry.
All right, just give it a couple years. Score predictions. Go on, put your flag line thing in the sand. What we saying?
2-2 draw.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Sorry, listeners.
Why do you never like my predictions?
It's so boring.
Why don't you go first?
Oh my god, the splinters in your bum from sitting on the fucking fence.
Do you know what was hilarious? Last time I predicted a draw.
It was a draw.
Yeah. So my bum was just fine. Thank you very much.
I'm actually going to go 2-1 USA.
Oh my god, man, you're so boring.
That wasn't even that's a spicy prediction.
Sure it is.
Right. Well, listeners, can you tell us what you think and who you think got it right and whether you think Rachel's predictions are very boring and plain?